Hi, this is Jason Dowdy. I'm the Executive Director of Great Hearts Services. This is a new initiative where we are taking Great Hearts' 20 plus years of experience in curriculum development, teacher coaching, professional development, and even helping with student culture. Or maybe there's a session taught by one of our many teachers or leaders that you've thought, wow, I would love to bring that to my school. If that's you, then please meet me in the foyer 2:45 to 3:30 today, and I'll be happy to talk with you about many of the ways that Great Hearts can serve you. See you there.
As we launch this symposium, remind yourself to choose to wonder.
If we are to achieve that vision, our charge is clear. Deliver this cherished gift in faithful but varied wrappings, and give it in all places where parents and children await it.
We gather together, all together, from every corner of education and classical education on sort of neutral ground.
Education is above all concerned with wonder. Displaying it, responding to it, admiring it, and protecting it.
Spring is the mischief, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head.
We want students to learn to submit to wisdom, to be invited into a story that doesn't begin with them, but began before them and ends after them.
At such moments, the possibilities for beautiful human action in the world as it is seem inexhaustible.
You are entering into a great tradition that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years.
Education passes on culture, that great concept of paideia. And it's not just the particular culture of a time and place and people, though it is, but it is that deep, deep culture of what it means to be human and to pursue excellence.
And so every child deserves that freedom to wonder.
Today, many young students are passing through our schools, and if you can provide them the opportunity to understand the depth of a life spent in pursuit of beauty, you will give them the tools to succeed at it.
Classical education consists in a confident claim about tomorrow, that our prospects are brightest when we're formed in a time-tested body of reason, experience, and insight, moral and practical, from age to age and from place to place, from achievement and triumph. The holders of that stake are literally innumerable. And of course, most of them, we can hope, yet to be born. The cause is universal, and the inheritance holds a share for every soul.
Good morning. Can everybody please take your seats? Welcome to the second full day of the Great Hearts National Symposium for Classical Education. We have an enormously sort of full program of workshops and our keynote address this morning, and then panel discussions about pressing issues in classical education and scholar talks. I hope that you'll have trouble choosing. That's my objective every year, to have such a plentiful selection for you that you hardly know where to go. So thank you again to all of you who I didn't get to welcome last night, who have just arrived today. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone. And I just also want to just take 1 minute to thank the entire team that makes Symposium possible. I know that I'm the one who stands up here and you know who I am, but there's a huge team of people behind this symposium. There's our AV team and our communications team. There's the steering committee. There are all my partners who advise me on speakers and make suggestions about the great the great pool of talent from which we have to draw for speakers. But we also have the Great Hearts Institute team, and we're a small but mighty team. Annie Matsuda, Jennifer Richter, and Shannon McQuitty, and we have amazing interns, Oliver, Elvie, and Jordan this year. So a new publication, and we did it so that we could, it's a quarterly publication, and its objective is to offer the classical community a space to explore the great works and enduring questions that have shaped human thought and dialogue across the centuries. And we also wrestle with contemporary challenges that are in our classroom and curriculum and pedagogy, and also in the public arena, the different issues that we confront. And I invite you all to subscribe and to become part of that community. You can just read, or you can think about submitting an essay to us for publication. The way that you subscribe, there's a QR code right up there, but it's also on the top left corner of the 8th page of your program. So everyone just get out your phones. You can do it now, actually. You can subscribe right now. And I think we just want to grow that community so that we're all reading and thinking and conversing together. So please consider subscribing. Right now is great, actually. And please join our community and think about writing for us. Second, if you haven't downloaded the app, please download the app so that you can get real-time updates from us. And then third, and that's also, there's a QR code on page 8. And then at the back of the program is the QR code for registering for next year. I know it's only the second day of Symposium, but we give you an early bird rate, which is the lowest rate that's available all year long. It's below the rate that anybody else will get during the year, and you can access that code on the back page, and it is available for the whole week of this week through next week. I think March 9. And I also wanted to take one more minute to tell you what our theme is for next year. Our annual theme next year will be Recovering Reading and Reason in a Distracted Age. Education runs through reading. To have an education is to know how to read fully and deeply about all the subjects on the written page and under the sun. Surrounded by screens and isolated by earpods, our habits of deep reading, careful reasoning, and thoughtful conversation are eroding in a way that is fracturing our civic life and undermining the life of the mind. Our discussion next year will focus on how classical education is the path forward to recovering the power of words, the discipline of argument, and the wonders of the natural world. It's our effort to renew our perpetual astonishment at what C.S. Lewis referred to in The Abolition of Man as the mystery of humanity. So join us next year for this really pressing and important topic. And I look forward to receiving your proposals as well for participating. Okay, before we bring our keynote speaker up, we have some talent, some Great Hearts talent that I'd like to introduce. First is the Veritas Prep Academy Chorale, a select choral ensemble a select choral assembly made up of 10th through 12th grade students from the Great Hearts Veritas Prep Academy. Since its inception nearly 20 years ago, the ensemble has performed repertoire of great difficulty and skill level. They perform multiple times throughout the year, including the NAU Jazz Madrigal Festival in February, where they repeatedly earn the top superior rating. The chorale is directed by Mrs. Jenny Rathberg, and this morning they're performing My Soul's Been Anchored in the Lord, arranged by Moses Hagen. Sorry, I just need...
Before I'd stay in hell one day, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. I'd sing and pray myself away. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored, anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. Good Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. God shout and pray and never stop. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Until I reach thy mountain top. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored, anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. My Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. Good Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. Do you love him? Oh yes. Do you love him? Hallelujah. Do you love him? Oh yes. God Almighty. Are you anchored? Are you anchored? Oh yes. Yes, I'm anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Yes, will you serve him? Will you serve him? Oh yes. Will you serve him? Hallelujah. Will you serve him? Oh yes. God Almighty. Are you anchored? Are you anchored? Oh yes. Yes, I'm anchored. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Hallelujah. Will you praise him? Will you praise him? Oh yes. Will you praise him? Hallelujah. Will you praise him? Oh yes. God Almighty. Are you anchored? Yes, I'm anchored. Lord, I'm anchored. Oh yes. Lord, I love you. Oh yes. Yes, I'll serve you. Oh yes. Lord, I'll praise you. Oh yes. Hallelujah. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. God Almighty, mine been anchored. Anchored in the Lord.
Thank you again to the Veritas Prep Ensemble Chorale. That were wonderful. Thank Every year at Great Hearts, we have an annual bard competition. And this year we have the winner of that competition here to perform for you as well. Leah MacArthur is a fierce competitor and fearless performer whose discipline and artistry earned her the Great Hearts 2025 Bard Award. This morning, Leah is honored to perform her award-winning portrayal of Juliet in Romeo and Juliet, Act 4, Scene 3. Leah?
What if it be a poison, which the friar subtly hath ministered to have me dead, lest in this marriage he should be dishonored, because I married me before to Romeo? I fear it is, and yet methinks it should not, for he hath still been tried a holy man. How if, when I'm late, or if I live, is it not very like the horrible conceit of death and night, together with the terror of the place? As in a vault, an ancient receptacle, wherefore these many 100 years, the bones of all my buried ancestors are packed, where bloody Tybalt, but green in earth, lies festering in his shroud, where, as they say, at some hours of the night, spirits resort. Alack, alack, is it not like that I, so early waking, what with loathsome smells, and shrieks like mandrakes torn out of the earth, that living mortals hearing them run mad? Oh, if I wake, shall it not be distraught, environed with all these hideous fears, and madly play with my forefathers' joints, and pluck the mangled Tybalt from his shroud? And in this rage, with some great kinsman's bone, as with a club dash out my desperate brains. Oh, look, methinks I see my cousin's ghost, seeking out Romeo, that did spit his body upon a rapier's point. Stay, Tybalt, stay. Romeo! Romeo? Romeo. Here's drink. I drink to thee. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give her one more round of applause. That is somebody that I do believe understands and appreciates Shakespeare at a young age, Mr. Perrin. Well, good morning. So grateful to welcome you all again. We believe that the work of forming hearts and minds is best done in thoughtful community with you all. My name is Geraldine Olson. I'm the Chief People Officer with Great Hearts. I work with our teachers and our teacher professional development programs and try to care for them in many ways. I've also had the great fortune in the past several months as we launch Great Hearts Services to work with schools that are Great Hearts partner schools now, joining the network in new and interesting ways, but also just work with schools across the country and join together in thinking through how to do things well together that we love. So would love to join the conversation with you all. Stop by the Great Hearts table and let's solve problems together as we pursue meaningful work. I have the great privilege also of introducing our speaker today, and if you'll allow me, I'd love to just contextualize a bit this topic. While this topic on reading in some ways is a great preview for next year's conference, it's also relevant for this year's theme. As we know, 250 years ago, a group of people formed by classical education put thought to quill to paper and created quite a powerful document. A document that did not merely announce a political break, but advanced a carefully reasoned argument about human nature, about justice, about liberty. It is a wonderful example of classical rhetorical argument. But as we admire that document, it is worth noticing what the Declaration assumes in turn of its reader. This document is not brief. It is not simple. It is not written for skimming. It is not tweetable, is not easily memed. Rather, it unfolds quite slowly across phrases and clauses and complex sentences and paragraphs, each of which demand careful attention, robust background knowledge, and the ability to follow argument across time. In short, it is a document that requires of its citizenship, if it is to be a free people, to read well. This idea, of course, was so intuited by Frederick Douglass that he retells in his autobiography that as a young enslaved boy in Baltimore, he would trade his daily bread for reading lessons from young, poor white boys on the street, eventually not only gaining his freedom because he understood and could read about his rights, but ultimately became one of the greatest orators in American history. Classical education has always centered on developing first the arts of language in the development of our humanity. We are grateful to be sponsored in this session by two organizations that support that well. The Institute for Excellence in Writing equips teachers with methods and materials that develop confident, capable communicators by attending carefully to listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Their work reinforces the classical truth that language is not ancillary to thinking. It is the means by which thinking is formed and expressed. Core Knowledge, likewise, has spent decades advancing the conviction that education must be knowledge-rich and content-focused. Its work reflects the shared belief that classical educators and cognitive scientists think alike, that shared knowledge enables stronger reading, deeper thinking, and fuller participation in civic life. They also agree with us that great traditional practices should be supported well by research. While classical educators are often appropriately cautious about chasing trends that are driven by thin or unstable evidence, we also must remain willing to learn from high-quality scholarship. We're grateful, of course, that research now debunks the faulty whole language approach to reading that had its heyday and now reinforces the effectiveness of phonics. So what we're here today to talk about is what does an effective instruction, according to research, look like after phonics? And it is for this that we are delighted to hear from our speaker today. Mr. Lemov is the author, as many of you know, of Teach Like a Champion, now in its 3.0 edition, along with many other titles, such as The Coach's Guide to Teaching, the book Reconnect, Building School Culture, and recently, the Teach Like a Champion Guide to the Science of Reading. Of course, most importantly, his credentials include being an actual teacher and a school leader. As such, Mr. Lemov has spent his career translating careful observation and research into practices that teachers might actually use. In his work on reading, Mr. Lemov highlights something that may be counterintuitive to some state exam writers, but would have sounded entirely familiar to the founders and to classical thinkers across the centuries. That after students learn to decode, one of the most powerful things teachers can do is to keep reading. Whole books, great ones, together. And so it sounds very much like our modern practical teacher and researcher today might just agree with the principles of a very, very old approach to education. And as we reflect on the 250th anniversary of a declaration that entrusted liberty to words and arguments and shared understanding, we are once again reminded that the education worthy of a free people must cultivate readers capable of sustained thought and disciplined reading. So join with me in sustained thought, listening, and consideration to our speaker today, Mr. Doug Lemov.
Thanks, Geraldine. I really appreciate that introduction. And thanks to Leah and to the chorale. I now realize after that lovely opening to the day that I am third, not just chronologically, in more ways than just chronologically today. But I'm really excited to get to talk with you today and try to build a bridge between the beautiful work that you do as classical educators and cognitive science. And so my remarks are entitled The Science of Reading Books, particularly. This image I've been told to expect great things from this audience, lots of engagement, lots of insight. So this is you, no pressure. But since it's such an engaged audience that values reading so much, let's read something together and do a little bit of inferential thinking, if you don't mind. I'm going to just share a simple story with you, and then I'll give you some directions for some things I'd love to do with this story. Here's my story. Wrote it myself. It's tied in the 8th when Thomas throws four straight balls to the number 9 hitter, Jeffries. Carlson's face is expressed. Consider yourselves a baseball person. I love the game. I find it interesting. Great. Sorry. May I have your attention, please? Thank you so much. Teacher 101. When I say go, but not before I say go. If you're a baseball person, just raise your hand really quickly. If you're not a baseball person, now raise your hand again. So you're looking for someone like you. And here's the question. With a colleague, oh, by the way, after you've discussed for 30 seconds, I will make this gesture. This means we're coming back together. If you will make this gesture too, then other people around you will know that I'm trying to bring you back together. I will be able to honor your time, and we won't spend the whole time with me pleading with you to come back from the turn and talk. So watch for the hand. Will you take 30 seconds with the person next to you and have a discussion about this question? Who do you think is in the wrong and why? 30 seconds, begin. Okay, thanks everybody. That was beautiful. I'm just gonna, can you put your hand up again if you were in a baseball group? Just really quickly. Great, fantastic. Do you mind kicking us off in the white sweater? Just briefly, your opinion. Generally speaking, what did you think who did you think might be more in the wrong in this story?
We think that either Carlson, who we assume is the coach, might be in the wrong.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Can I just pause you for 1 second? On the non-baseball groups, did everyone get that Carlson was the manager? Yeah. Okay, so interesting. Okay, keep going.
And Thomas might also be in the wrong.
Yeah.
He just walked somebody to first base, and obviously the manager is unhappy with that. But we don't have enough context to know if that's the first person who walked or not.
Okay, great. Anyone want to just build off of that? They have a strong opinion as to from the baseball crew as to who's more at fault here. Want to jump in? Yeah, thanks.
So we thought Thomas was more at fault because sportsmanship is a big part of baseball.
Oh, lovely.
Whether or not it was the first person
Oh.
who walked, he should have respected the manager.
You went to a whole level that I hadn't even thought of. That's beautiful. Do you want to, on the red shirt of you, want to just chime in a little bit more about your thoughts about who's at fault here?
Thomas was a rookie.
Yeah. By the way, did the people in the non-baseball group get that the rookie was Thomas, who's also a pitcher? Everyone in the room is clear on that? Some no's, some yes. Okay, keep going.
So as a rookie, he's reacting emotionally.
Okay.
So I would say he's probably more in the wrong, but do I think anybody's in the wrong? The manager's not. He just threw 4 balls to the 9-ball hitter.
Right. Why is that a big deal? You said four balls to the number 9 hitter. Why does that matter?
Because you just walked in and probably put the time, you probably put the go-ahead run on base.
To the weakest hitter on the team. Did everyone in the room get that the number 9 hitter is the weakest? Walking the number 9 hitter on 4 pitches? That's a big deal. Great, I appreciate, so perfect analysis there. Oh, because she talks about sportsmanship, which I hadn't. I was only thinking about blame from like from a sport. But close us out on this one. As a base, are you on the baseball?
Yeah.
Great.
So first of all, I mean, when you walk back to the dugout, he's upset. He's going to the showers. He's not supposed to say anything. We don't want to say anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Take a shower. Okay. I think Carlson should have slapped him on the butt or the back and said, "Hey, good job."
Okay. Did it just? Okay. Beautiful. Here. Okay. Love this. There is protocol here. The manager always walks out to the mound to take the pitcher out of the game and says, "Good job, son. You gave it your best. Maybe tomorrow." He doesn't do any of that. He sits in the dugout and disrespects this pitcher. Did everyone get that, by the way?
I got that.
You got that. A lot of people in the room did not get that. He's got it. So there's a lot going on in this story, right? Thomas is the pit. Here's some things that might be interesting to those of you who are not in the baseball group, who don't know a lot about baseball. First of all, did you get that Jeffries was, what team Jeffries was? Jeffries was on the other team, right? So Thomas is the pitcher, he's throwing to Jeffries. Thomas is a rookie, Carlson is his manager. They're upset because you never walk the number 9 hitter, certainly not on 4 pitches. Carlson doesn't even go out to the mound. Did you get that? That's a gesture of disrespect. It's really a slap to this young kid. And so this is why Thomas walks by him without saying anything to the showers, because he's also been disrespected here. From the group that were not baseball people, did you get all this out of the story? Was it frustrating for you to try and answer this question? This is fascinating. This is a really simple text, by the way. It's written at about the 5th or 6th grade level. Right, so really, we're an elite group of educators. We should be crushing this. But it demonstrates to us something really important that we know about reading. And it was actually proven, the initial study on this is called the baseball study. It's by Recht and Leslie. It was done in 1998. And it used a passage about baseball to make this point. What Recht and Leslie did was they took a group of students, half of whom were high-level readers, and half of whom were low-level readers. And they gave them a passage to read, and the passage was about baseball. But then they divided the room in half again, because half of the high-level readers knew a lot about baseball, and half the high-level readers didn't know much about baseball. Half the low-level readers knew a lot about baseball, half the low-level readers did not. So we have 4 groups. We've got high reading ability, high baseball knowledge, low reading ability, high baseball knowledge, high reading ability, low baseball knowledge, and low reading ability, low baseball knowledge. And then they gave them a test. Did you understand what happened in this passage? And there are a couple things that happen that you would expect, which is kids with high reading ability and high baseball knowledge basically crushed the test. They got all the questions right. They did beautifully. And kids with low reading ability and low baseball knowledge did really poorly. They're over there on the right at just over 40%, just above guessing rate, right? They really had no idea what was going on. The interesting thing is in the middle, where students with, quote, low reading ability dramatically outperformed kids with high reading ability but low knowledge of baseball. By far the biggest disparity on the graph, by the way. This is really a graph about 2 high groups and 2 low groups, the high knowledge groups and the low knowledge groups. What this tells us is that the inferences that we make from a text are knowledge-driven more than skill-driven. And this, for the most part, this has been demonstrated in study after study in different contexts. It's news to most American reading teachers and many American teachers and educators. Let me just give you one more story to demonstrate some of the ways that knowledge is critically important to reading. Here's another little story that I'm just going to give you like 20 seconds to talk about. She looked at the crate and put her bear down. It was going to be hard to carry. Just like 20 seconds with the person next to you. Explain what's happening in this story. Who's it about? What's happening? 20 seconds, go. Just out of curiosity, How many people told a story that looked something like this, like the picture on the right? She, in this case, how many people thought that it was a little girl? How did you know it was a little girl? How do you know it's this kind of bear as opposed to that it's not a real bear? I just want to point out to you some ambiguities in this be a child. But even this word it, the pronoun here, the pronoun reference is ambiguous here. It could be the box or it could be the bear. But really, you knew that it was like much more logical because of just the weights of things, that it would be the crate that would be hard to carry. So this is a much more simple demonstration of the same idea, which is that every text is ambiguous, inherently ambiguous. It contains things that the author presumes that you will know and therefore does not explain to you. So we are always disambiguating any text that we read, and we use knowledge that we're not even aware of to do this. You weren't aware of even the knowledge that you had of these things that allowed you to simply and easily disambiguate this text. So this is really fascinating because what it tells us is that the key to higher order thinking when we engage a text is how much background knowledge the reader has. If you have background knowledge, you make insights about Thomas versus Carlson and who is at fault, or even very simple inferences about what the girl picked up in the story. And if you don't, and those inferences tend to happen automatically if you have background knowledge, and if you don't have background knowledge, they don't happen. This is fascinating because it runs contrary to what happens in most reading classes and English classes in American schools, which is the first principle of American reading instruction is the belief in the transferable skill, which is, it's truly a beautiful dream. And the transferable skill dream goes something like this. If I teach you, you could close your eyes while I say this because it's so beautiful to imagine. If I teach you the 7 steps to finding the main idea of a passage, and we practice finding the main idea of passages, keep your eyes closed, please. You will be able to find the main idea of any passage that I give you for the rest of your life. You will have such a beautiful dream. Now we should open. Same with you will be able to make inferences. If I teach you that an inference is reading between the lines, and when it's what the author left unsaid, it's what the author what? Left unsaid. Great. And if I explain that to you in 7 or 8 meta steps, I'm asking myself questions about that if I do that for you, you will be able to make inferences from any text for the rest of your life. It's such a beautiful dream. It's profoundly unscientific, but not costless. So this is just a quotation from the great Daniel Willingham, the University of Virginia cognitive scientist. Data from the last 30 years lead to a conclusion that is not scientifically challengeable. Thinking well requires knowing facts. The very processes that teachers care about most, critical thinking processes like reasoning and problem solving, are intimately intertwined with factual knowledge that is in long-term memory, not just in the environment. Most people believe that thinking processes are akin to those of a calculator. A calculator has a set of procedures available, addition, multiplication, etc. If you learn a new thinking operation, like making inferences, it seems like that operation should be applicable in all settings, but the human mind does not work that way. Critical thinking processes are tied to background knowledge. What Willingham says is they are domain specific. Quick 30 seconds with your partner, have an insight about particle physics, go. I mean, I couldn't shut you up 30 seconds ago, and now nobody in the room has anything to say, right? Furthermore, this is a little bit more from Willingham, practicing this thing, practicing making inferences or finding the main idea, this idea of these skills, brings no benefit to reading comprehension use. There was no evidence that increasing instructional time for comprehension strategies, even by 400%, brought any benefit. But if you walk into an American classroom, you are very likely to see 45 minutes of let's talk about what we're doing when we're trying to make inferences from this text. It comes at a massive opportunity cost. It's also one of the best ways I can think of to kill a book, to cause the book to become a vehicle for teaching you these allegedly transferable skills. And you could argue really that this is the corollary. Once you believe that reading is made up of a set of transferable, fungible skills, the corollary is that it doesn't matter what you're reading, because what I'm really teaching you is a set of skills that you can apply to any text. And so then what we get is kids reading excerpts and extracts in classes, and the purpose of them is to teach them to make character inferences or to find the main idea. So this leads to the death of the book. If either we don't read books because they're not worth it, because it's really hard to get kids to read books, so why would we do that? Or it's much just simpler to organize a series of texts around very simple text, one text today about the naked mole rat and another one tomorrow about the American Revolution, and we'll talk about the overall structure and the subheadings and the headings and the way that the passage is organized. That is the death of the text. But interestingly, this is everywhere. The National Council for Teachers of English has advised teachers that they could just as well replace books with short passages or even with videos. Short videos would be just as good. And when you abandon your principles that decisively, you need some fancy-ass jargon for it. And what they came up with is the phrase decentering the text. And I'm here to tell you that the thing that I love about this group is we are not going to decenter, that we actually should be centering the text. That what people do, even experts like the NCTE, is exactly wrong from a cognitive standpoint. So I just want to build a defense for the book, first of all. I know that you all believe in books. I'm preaching to the choir. I've got my little preaching to the choir illustration over here. But I also want to arm the choir a little bit and tell you some of the science that why books are so profoundly important for young people. And then I want to talk a little bit about it's actually really hard. Once you know that background knowledge is the driver of insight and not skills, it's actually really hard to teach a book in a knowledge-rich environment the right way. I can't tell you how many schools I've been to where the principal or the teachers will say, oh yes, we've read Recht and Leslie. We're all about knowledge. And then I walk into their classrooms and it's 45 minutes of main idea. And it's a death in life for those kids. So first of all, a brief cognitive defense of the book. The first thing to recognize is that stories are cognitively privileged. We've evolved to value stories. Stories started long before we could write them down. And evolutionarily, the people who survived were the people who listened. When we sat around campfires in prehistory, we told each other stories about how to hunt an antelope. A dog is born with instincts for hunting whatever it hunts, and it doesn't need to have it explained to it. But a human being has to learn these things. And so the people who sat around campfires and listened carefully to the stories about how we hunted antelopes together were more likely to survive. They were also more likely to survive because listening to the story together drew them together into groups. It bonded them. Every society starts with myths. The people who survived were the people who listened to stories, and so we have evolved to have stories be cognitively privileged. If you deliver students a piece of information in a story versus in an expository manner, they are more likely to remember more of the story. Yes, we need to teach them text in an expository manner, but stories are cognitively privileged. People remember more when information is presented in a form of a story. Books also teach and reward the diligence to persist, and this is profoundly important, especially when they're great books. I just finished Ian McEwan's Atonement, and I have to be honest with you. The first 40 pages, I was really struggling with it. I was actually doing this little thing that I do. So it's like a tick where I'm counting the pages because I'm just trying to finish the book. I'm on 42, and I'm on 46, and I'm on 48. I'm on 160. I'm on 200. Suddenly, when you persist for a period of time, you enter the world of the book, and it takes time, and it takes persistence. But then you are rewarded, and there are very few things in our society now that reward persistence. Marshall McLuhan famously said that the medium is the message. The message of most of the media that kids consume now is the world can be understood in 128 characters. Your hot take is probably right. And so the fact that the book models long-form thinking is the antidote to that world. This would be great for next year's conversation as well. But one of the most interesting things about a book is that the protagonist almost never believes at the end what they believed at the beginning. It's about idea change. It's also, interestingly, cognitive scientists say that a book is the closest possible analog to our own thinking, right? It's an individual voice wrestling with, in language, what that person sees around them. And this is why, stream of consciousness, the literary form of stream of consciousness, is an effort to, to capitalize and exploit that similarity. I have a little picture of William Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury here, right? It's almost deconstructs language in an effort to capture this idea that if we want people to have comparisons for their own internal narrative voice, a book is the best way to capture that, to compare my own thinking to someone else's thinking. So it's the closest possible analog to our own thinking. It provides cultural capital, asterisk there, because ideally we're teaching students great books and letting them be heir to the greatest ideas that have been thought. But it's a real disservice to walk into a classroom at university and not know anything about when someone drops an allusion to Big Brother or 1984, to have not read that book and have no idea what people his school, and he gets there and he's like walking through the bookstore and there are allusions to Marx and Monet and Orwell, and he doesn't understand what any of them mean, right? So if we want people to be able to enter the conversation, cultural capital is really important. And the last thing that I would say is there's so much conversation about diversity, and the most important form of diversity that I think we can expose our young people to is the diversity of voices from the past. How do people think of it? Hard to read a book in a way that aligns to cognitive science, or it's not intuitive. Hard to read a book in a way that aligns to cognitive science, or it's not intuitive. And the first thing that I want to share with you is my own hot take, some hot news here. A recent development. This is one of the first printed texts. It's a clay cuneiform text from, I think, Mesopotamia. And this reminds us that we've only been reading texts for 5,000 years. That's how old this document is, which is interesting because we've been speaking by comparison evolutionary biologists disagree on this. Let's say between 200 and 500,000 years we've been speaking for. Why is that difference important? Well, because our brains have had time to evolve for speaking. So there are parts of your brain, Broca's area, Wernicke's area, that are designed for speech. And so an infant left untutored will begin to mimic its parents and the adults around it, and it will learn to speak without much instruction in most cases. Obviously, there are exceptions. But we've only been reading for 5,000 years. And for most of that 5,000 years, only a few of us could read. And so we have not been able to evolve our brains for reading. What that means is that whenever we read, we are using neuroplasticity. We are rewiring some portion of our brain that is designed for something else and putting it in service of reading. The most important phrase, I think, in our book on the science of reading is, we wire how we fire. Because we are rewiring our brains as we read, every time we read, we are shaping the way that we will read. So, for example, my teenage son, who I required to read for 45 minutes 3 times a week, this is him reading. He would take the book that he was reading. He would lie on the living room couch with his cell phone right here in his chest. Now is the winter of our discontent, bzz, dude, over at Byron's, you coming over soon? Bzz, dude, that girl in your math class, gonna ask her out soon? Bzz, dude, what's the homework? Bzz, dude, peep this video. His experience is constantly fractured with the text, and that is the way that he will learn to read, right? That will be his experience will be of constant half attention and fractured attention. And of course, what we want is deep and sustained attention in reading. So the first thing to attend to is attention. And one of the beautiful things about bringing a book into the classroom is that we can curate the attentional environment to help re-socialize students to sustain attention in a way that everything else in their lives socializes them to let their attention be fractured. So the way that students read in our classrooms is actually really, really important. That's the first of 7. I'm just going to give you the overview of the 7 arguments we make in our book really, really quickly, and then we're going to jump into a classroom and watch a teacher actually teaching, and I'll ask you to talk about it a little bit. But the first thing is just to be aware of how intentionally demanding reading is, and how it's among the most attentionally demanding tasks that we can do, especially with an important complex text, and how much attention has changed. Attention has been hijacked by technology. 2, fluency is the hidden driver of comprehension. It's so easily overlooked. I'm going to show you some data on this in a minute, so I'll skip it for now. 3, what we've already established, knowledge, not skills, lead to comprehension and understanding, but it's challenging to build a knowledge-rich reading environment. Vocabulary is the most important and most common form of knowledge, but we often teach it like a skill. So I'll hopefully have time to show you a video of a vocabulary instruction that I think is really transformative and exciting. Intentional, deliberate writing supports better reading in multiple ways. When you write something, you remember it better. But also, I can give you writing exercises that shape your thinking about a text in a much more deliberate and intentional way. 6, the book is the optimal format for student reading. I think we've established that. I know this is the choir. And 7, close reading, attentive focus to how meaning is created in complex text is the goal of reading instruction. We want to push students to be able to read things that are at or above their comfort zone. So let's start with fluency, because it's so easy to overlook. I almost overlooked it in this presentation, and just this morning I put these slides back in because it's so important. This is a study done in Italy, interestingly, by Lucia Bagazzi and colleagues in 2017, and I think it's relevant that it's done in Italy because Italian is a much less orthographically deep language than English, which means it has fewer irregularities and variations. It's easier to learn to read Italian than it is to learn to read English. Reading fluency predicted all school marks in all literacy-based subjects, with reading rapidity being the most important predictor. School level did not moderate the relationship between reading fluency and school outcomes, confirming the importance of effortless and automatized reading even in higher school levels. This study was done among 7th and 8th graders, right? And even at that grade, whether you can read automatically and quickly and fluently is the biggest single driver of students' grades in their classes. Similar, I think what's interesting about this is how old the students are in these studies, because most of the conversation about fluency ends in 2nd and 3rd grade. In a study of 227 6th and 7th grade students, oral reading fluency explained between 50 and 62% of the difference in reading comprehension. In other words, if I know how fluent you are, I can predict 50% of whether you understand a text that you read. This is because your working memory is tiny, your conscious thinking is tiny, and it's finite, and if you have to think about the words, your perception will be degraded. Your working memory bandwidth is tiny, and you won't be able to think about meaning if you're trying to just think about what the words mean. You've probably experienced this if you're trying to learn a foreign language. I'm trying to learn Spanish right now, and I can figure out the sentences, but I have to think hard about every word, and that causes me to I have to go back and reread this. As soon as I'm halfway through a sentence, I have to go back and start over because I've already kind of lost the thread. This happens to students over and over again. This study, by the way, is by David Page at the University of Northern Illinois. He's probably the foremost fluency expert in the country. And so I read this data, and I was like, I spent a day and a half trying to Google, like, how common are fluency problems in American schools? What's the data? How many kids are disfluent? Like, we should know this. And I couldn't find the data, so I called David Page, and he said, nobody knows. One of my co-authors in writing this book was like, oh my God, my son is in 8th grade, and I have no idea. I haven't listened to him read in years. I have no idea what the state of his fluency is. Anyway, he sent me an email. We looked at a data table together, and he says, at the end of the day, my hunch is that 40 to 50% of middle school students do not have proper reading fluency. In schools where students generally struggle with academic attainment, this percentage is likely closer to 80%. If you can't read, in the words of Mark Seidenberg, at the speed of sight, you have very little cognitive capacity left over for comprehension. So fluency is disfluency is an epidemic. It's hiding in plain sight. If you have brilliant kiddos who then you put a text in front of them, especially a challenging text, and they struggle to understand it, the first thing we should be thinking about is there a fluency issue? So my God, please read aloud with students in class. More on that in my second session. So I'm going to drop you into a classroom now. This teacher is Gabby Wolf. She teaches at, this is a year 11 class in London. So this is 10th grade for us. This is a high poverty school in one of the toughest areas of London, but you'd never get it. It's just such a beautiful lesson. They're reading Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so it's a complex, challenging, historically important text. It's a rich text. I'm going to show you some sections of her lesson and just ask you to talk about what's happening here, why is she doing it, and what's good. And particularly, I might ask you to try and use a lens of these 7 ideas that we talked about before. So give me just a jiffy to mess up the technology here, and I'll show you Gabby's.
Have your green pens ready, please? Good. So add to your answers as you hear people explaining the expectations of the upper middle class.
I'm just going to pause here for a second to explain what she's doing. Before they started reading today, they read a nonfiction passage about Victorian social mores. Because so much of Stevenson's book is about Victorian anxieties, about the breaking of those social norms. Do kids, primarily immigrant, and now she's just asking the students to talk a little bit about this brief nonfiction article that she gave them on background for the book.
I think not only do they expect you to be perfect and not make sinful decisions, but they also I think they also, for them, it's important that you present yourself well superficially as well.
Excellent. Can we add to that, Ahmed K?
I said
with voice.
In the Victorian era, they were expected to keep their
He's looking at the article as he's narrating his thoughts here.
respectable reputation by appearing in public as respectful and
Good. You use the word reputation. So if you haven't used the word reputation, please add that in. How did you use the word? Say the sentence again.
I'll just pause here and jump ahead a little bit.
In the media. So first of all, we have to think about why sensationalism. Today, even, you know that sensationalism in the media sells newspapers. And that's no different in the Victorian era. You've got some examples here of Jack the Ripper, which was a couple of years after.
So what she's got on the screen right now are just a series of, she's extracted headlines from Victorian-era newspapers of, just showing sensationalism and salacious headlines, particularly about Jack the Ripper, which happened within, 5 years of Stevenson's writing his novel.
But still similar climate claims 5th Victorian woman brutally hacked to death, and other phrases like ghastly murder. So that's very scary to people to read, but it sells newspapers as well. So what is it about our human nature that means sensationalized crime sells papers? What is it about our minds that means we're interested in that? Turn and talk, and I'll be ready to share back.
Okay, while they're turning and talking to discuss sensationalism, I would just like to invite you to spend 20 seconds turning and talking to the person next to you. How does what Gabby has done so far, she's done 2 things to feed background knowledge in. What has she done? How will those things affect students' experience reading the text? Just spend 20 seconds talking to the person next to you about that. Thanks, everybody. It looked like a lovely conversation here. Do you mind just sharing one thing that maybe you guys observed, that one way this might affect students, what she's done here? Thanks. Do you mind just shouting a tiny bit, and I'll voice it? Yeah, thanks.
We just really appreciated how she was more of a facilitator. So she was anticipating, I believe, how they were going to answer.
Yeah.
And then, asking them to justify, restate, pulling out the
Yeah.
vocabulary, and then asking the students to kind of guide the conversation
Yeah.
along.
Love that. So she gave them a piece of knowledge, an article about facts about Victorian culture. Then she asked them to reflect on it, think about it, process it directly, before she then asked them to apply that to the text. So they've even begun encoding that knowledge right away. So she's feeding, you could say, background knowledge into the classroom tank in 2 different ways. One is what we call embedded nonfiction. Let me give you a short article to read about what you're going to find out today. And 2 is what I would call an embellishment, which is a short, just-in-time delivery of some sort of piece of simple information. In this case, it's just these headlines. Could be pictures. I'll show you some other examples later. Great. So any other quick thoughts on the way that this will affect student thinking? Anything else come up? Yeah, what did you talk about?
I thought it was interesting because my daughter is in speech therapy.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
In one session, her speech therapist said, how many books has she read this year?
Yeah.
Because that is one of the number ways you use to expand your vocabulary.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's a perfect transition to where we're going. So now that she's spent time investing in background knowledge, here's Gabby's next move with her students. And I think you'll find some echoes of what you're just talking about there.
Exploited in Victorian times, and then why would Stevenson do the same thing in chapter 4 of his novel? So we are going to read the beginning of chapter 4. It is the one that is called the Carew murder case. So can you have your text in front of you, please? And we're going to focus on the gory details of this murder. And in the spirit of being sensationalist, we want to read it as we would probably have imagined Stevenson would want his readers to imagine it as they are going through this story. So I'm going to start off, and then I would like a few of you to volunteer with your highly expressive reading. I know some people who would make a very good job of that. So, here we go. Nearly a year later, in the month of October 18-, London was startled by a crime of singular ferocity, rendered all the more notable by the high position of the victim. The details were few and startling. A maidservant living alone in a house not far from the river had gone upstairs to bed about 11. Although a fog rolled over the city in the small hours, the early part of the night was cloudless, and the lane which the maid's window overlooked was brilliantly lit by the full moon. It seems she was romantically given, for she sat down upon her box, which stood immediately under the window, and fell into a dream of musing. Never, she used to say with streaming tears when she narrated that experience, never had she felt more at peace with all men or thought more kindly of the world. Imran, take over.
She sat, she became aware of an aged and beautiful gentleman with white hair, drawing near along the lane and advancing to meet her. Another and very small gentleman, to whom at first she paid less attention. When they had come within speech, which was just under the maid's eyes, the older man bowed and accosted the other with a very pretty manner of politeness. It did not seem as if the subject of his address were of great importance, indeed, from his point of view. It sometimes appeared as if he were only inquiring his way, but the moon shone in his face as he spoke, and the girl was pleased to watch him. It seemed to breathe such an innocence and old-world kindness of disposition, yet with something high too, as of a well-founded self-contempt.
Beautiful. Joe.
Presently, her eye wandered to the other, and she was surprised to recognize him as certain
Joan's reading is so beautiful here.
Mr. Hyde, who had once visited
to be exploited in Victorian times, and then why...
Joan, come back.
It seemed to breathe such an innocence.
To the other, and she was surprised to recognize him as certain Mr. Hyde, who had once visited her master and from whom she had conceived a dislike. He had in his hand a heavy cane, with which he was trifling, but he answered never a word and seemed to listen with an ill-contained impatience.
Okay, so I was going to read, but this is the bit we really need to be overly sensationalized.
And then all of a sudden he broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping with his foot, brandishing the cane, and carrying on like a madman. The old gentleman took a step back with the air of one very much surprised and a trifle hurt. And at that Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds and clubbed him to the earth.
Thank you. And next moment, with ape-like fury, he was trampling his victim underfoot and hailing down a storm of blows under which the bones were audibly shattered and the body jumped upon the roadway. At the horror of these sights and sounds, the maid fainted. Now, in your pairs, decide which one of you is going to read to the other, and I want you to go up to where it says, and showed the broken stick. Decide who's going to read. I want expression. Off you go.
I love just the fact at the end there that the room just like crackles to life with students enthusiastically taking on this very challenging text. Can I just give you 30 seconds to reflect on things, what's important that you saw there, and what Gabby was doing in the second half of that video. 30 seconds just to chat about some ideas with your partner. Straight minutes just reading the text with their eyes in, unbroken, focused on sustaining. This is the antidote to the way that my son reads. So a long stretch of shared intense focus in a very challenging text. The background knowledge aids insight and comprehension. Suddenly, everyone in the room can talk about reputation and sensationalism. They can bring this book to life. Number the Stars about the German resistance to the Nazi occupation in Denmark in the World War II. They don't have enough background knowledge to understand those things, so they're reading it, but it's really, it's not the same book for them unless we invest in the background knowledge. So you can really see how her pre-investment there brings this to life. The next thing that she does is she prepared to read this book to students. She reads it so beautifully to them. Do they know what Victorian prose should sound like? Or do they know that it can be beautiful? She creates for them a mental model of what it sounds like. And this mental model of her reading aloud will influence what happens to them when they read silently. Tim Shanahan, the reading researcher, is really clear in this, that like, the way that you learn to read aloud shapes the way you read silently. Is your internal reading voice expressive? Does it have prosody? Does it make meaning audible? That starts by having this beautiful model that Gabby creates, but then she asks the students to do it too. So one, right there, they're working on their fluency, but two, you can hear them almost copying her expressive model. So they're learning to become readers in the way that kids who are constantly read to become readers. And finally, she's just preparing them through all these things to deal with complex, challenging texts. So I would say that to me, this is a really beautiful lesson for those foundational ideas, right? She's invested in background knowledge. They read the book aloud. I talked to a teacher once at a workshop, and she said, I would like to do this too. I would like to read aloud in my classrooms, but I live in fear that an administrator will walk into my classroom and ask me when we're reading aloud why we're not teaching. And I would say, like, this is a much more productive use of student time than 45 minutes on the 7 steps to finding the main idea. So if our theme is how to read a book, how can I read a book? The first thing is we should create knowledge-rich reading environments, and that is really challenging. One of the things that we should do is what Gabby does here, which is embed nonfiction throughout the books, little short passages to illuminate things that students might not know about so they know more about them. We should feed in little pieces of knowledge when it's useful to them. I'm going to skip over knowledge organizers. You can read about them in our book. We should be really attentive to vocabulary. Hopefully I'll have time to get that. Then we should be really attentive to the ways of reading, including, there are 3 ways of reading. One is teacher reading aloud to students. Number 2 is students reading aloud in the classroom, which she does here. And the third one is independent reading. None of those is better than the other. They work in synergy, and one of the key decisions that I make is what's the balance of those. The harder the text, the more I might read aloud, but it's really important that that there's lots and lots of reading, one of the most valuable things we can have students do, and that we make intentional choices about which of those forms of reading we're doing and how we do them. Lastly, I might not have time for this, but if you come to the second session, I promise I'll get to it. Writing, which we don't see here, is incredibly powerful. This is an example of what we do. We have a reading, read, considered curriculum. One of the books that we teach is Animal Farm by George Orwell. And I made a mistake with, I gave my son Animal Farm in 7th grade, and he read it, and I was like, how'd you like it? And he said it was great. And I said, then I asked him a question about like allusion to the Russian Revolution, and he was like, what do you mean? To him, it was a great story about talking animals on a farm, and I realized that I had not invested in his background knowledge. So lots of times when we teach a book, we'll like give kids background before they start the book. What we try and do is in every lesson that we teach, there is at least some piece of short nonfiction that elucidates something about the text. So here are just some examples that we put into our book. There's so much shared singing. They sing the version of the whatever the communist song is. Anyway, so we talk about there's an article on the psychological impact of shared songs. Every faith sings together, right? There's a little bit of background like you might expect on the February Revolution, on Stalin's address to the people. But then we also have an article on like propaganda images and how propaganda works, and the psychology of false memory. And these are, you can see, embedded throughout the book. They're not just in chapter 1. Each day, we try to give students something to help them understand more about what they're reading. And there are these little arrows here to just point out that there is synergy here, which is the nonfiction helps students understand more and get more out of the fiction, but the fiction also helps you to read the nonfiction with more interest. Why am I reading this nonfiction article? If I can use the nonfiction, most of what students read in college and university will be nonfiction. But if I can help them read it in an environment where it's meaningful to them, where it helps them in some ways, they understand the power of nonfiction and they read that in a more engaged way as well. It's hard to do this, by the way, to find and source articles on lots of little things that are happening in novels. And so I think this is an argument for shared curriculum development across the school or across the network. I'm just going to check if I have enough time to show you a little bit of this video of, I probably don't. This is a really beautiful video of, this teacher is Emily D'Amato. She's actually teaching Animal Farm, and she's given her students an article on manipulation of psychological memories. So it's actually like a scientific article about how memories are manipulated, how memories are fallible. She asked them to read it, she asked them questions about it, and then she asked them to apply it to how Snowball and Napoleon are manipulating the other animal. Like, what elements from the scientific article do you see them manipulating in Animal Farm? They have a beautiful discussion, and I will send you this video to watch on your own because I think you'll really enjoy it. I talked about, in addition to embedding nonfiction's embellishments. These are just some examples from our curriculum, but the first one here in the middle is from a unit on occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Anyone know that story? Sherwood Anderson, like set in the Civil War. It starts with a Confederate soldier being hung from a bridge abutment. What is a bridge abutment? Like, how can I even picture this whole event if I don't know what a bridge abutment is? So you just put this up on the screen. This is what a bridge abutment looks like. Off we go. And now suddenly, students have access to much more of the story. I want to pivot, though, to talk about vocabulary, because vocabulary is so important and so easily overlooked. It's by far the most important form of background knowledge. You almost can't conceive of something unless you have a word for it. But to have a word for it is to discriminate, to be able to discriminate one concept from another. It's not just that you have a word, it's that you have an idea. There's an image of Eskimos here because there's this, I think it's probably a myth, but that the Eskimos have like 40 different words for snow. Has everyone ever heard that, right? I don't know whether that's true or not. It's true psychologically, though, which is, to an Eskimo, wind-blown granular snow is an important thing. To us, it's like snow is snow, right? We're getting in our car and we're driving through it. The idea that they have a different word for that causes them to be able to discriminate it, to see it differently, to conceptualize it differently. So the idea is the more that words cause me to be able to understand things, they're profoundly important as background knowledge. Not surprisingly, studies find the correlation between reading comprehension and vocabulary is between 0.3 and 0.8. And the studies vary wildly, but basically, about half of reading comprehension can be explained if you understand a student's vocabulary. There is strong evidence of causation here, not just correlation. But then also, I love this passage from Isabel Beck's book, Bringing Words to Life. People with more extensive vocabularies not only know more words, but they also know more about the words they know. Depth of word knowledge correlates almost as strongly to reading as breadth of word knowledge. So I want to take you back into the classroom here. This is Christine Torres. She's a 5th grade reading teacher in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I think this is a beautiful and very surprising vocabulary lesson. So I'll just ask you, what do you notice? What do you like? Is there anything surprising about what Christine is doing in her vocabulary lesson here? Lost my cursor. Okay, here's Christine.
Next word is caustic. On to 1, 2.
Caustic.
And yes to this enthusiasm. And it is an adjective. The definition is very harsh and critical. If someone is being critical of someone or something, they're like making judgments about it, usually in a disapproving way. So caustic, very harsh and critical. Related part of speech, caustically, it's an adverb. Read the situation for me, please, loud and proud. Azalea, yes, with that enthusiasm.
The judge's caustic remarks destroyed the context.
Back in the chat afterwards, you might just reflect on, look, why does the room explode to life when she gives kids the opportunity to talk? I don't know about your vocabulary lessons, but vocabulary lessons do not often light the room on fire. But it's worth reflecting on why that's happening here.
What was horrible?
The contestants act.
Yeah, the contestants act. The judge would never say that Ms. Torres' singing is horrible because you know I have a beautiful voice. So there would be no caustic remarks made by the judge that was judging me, right, Adrian? Oh, you look a little skeptical, Adrian. I don't know how I feel about that. How does this image demonstrate the word caustic? Look closely at the image. 15 seconds, turn and talk with your neighbor. Ready, go.
The picture is a demonstration of the word caustic because
The liquid is caustic because it burned the person's hand off.
Beautiful. Very well done. All right, now time to jump into some practice. Would you want to be friends with a person who frequently made caustic comments? Why or why not? 30 seconds with your teammate. Go.
I would not want to be friends with someone who always gave caustic comments because they'd just be mean and rude to everyone around you and probably to you as well. And it would just feel very rude.
How do you know that they'd be mean and rude?
Because we know caustic means very harsh and critical. So they're going to be making very harsh and critical comments towards people around them, especially you as a friend.
Okay, a couple seconds in a second for you to chat about that video. What do you find surprising, in particular, from a vocabulary standpoint? And really quickly, this is the image that Christine has them looking at when she asks them, what about the liquid is caustic? That might just be interesting to you. Anything surprising here? Anything good? And P.S., if you want to, what is wrong with those children? Because they seem to think vocabulary is the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. 30 seconds for you to chat about what you saw. Thanks, everybody. Do you mind if I ask you guys anything interesting or surprising to you here that you saw?
Well, I'm just taking back because I've talked a while.
Oh, great, fair enough. It does have that effect on me too.
She made a space that was safe for everyone to try.
Yeah.
Validated everyone. And
Beautiful.
Super excited to say, this is what I think.
Yeah. Nice. There's lots of space for thinking for students there. What else? What did you notice?
I love the idea of using a picture.
Yeah.
For a different representation of a second use of the word.
Yeah. There's so many uses of the word here, right? There's caustic remark, there's caustic liquid, there's caustic person, caustic friend. What else?
Without saying repeat, just giving them opportunities to repeat.
They use the word caustic 20 times here. How many times do you have to use the word before you've mastered it? Certainly not one. Let me just tell you one thing some things that I think are really interesting about this video. The first thing is this is not what's happening in this video. This is what I would say typically happens in a vocabulary lesson in an American school. We approach vocabulary as if it was a skill. And so we ask students questions like, does anyone know what caustic means? Based on your experience, what might caustic mean? Or what might it mean in the sentence? Or maybe I'd say, using context clues, can you guess what I see? So I appreciate that. That's the most common thing. It's another beautiful dream. Let's close our eyes. Let's imagine that we could cause students, by being attentive to context clues, to be able to infer the word meaning of any word that they come across in the rest of their lives just by mastering this beautiful dream. I'm going to keep my eyes closed because it's so beautiful, that dream. In the book, we call it a chimera, right? It's a beautiful but impossible dream that we kill ourselves by chasing. Because that's not how vocabulary works. Vocabulary is a body of knowledge. The reason that we do this is because we think you can't just tell kids the meaning of a vocabulary word. That's boring for them. They have to discover it for themselves so that they can do critical thinking. But if they do that, if you have kids guessing what caustic means based on misinformation, the best possible outcome is you get a B- definition of caustic. What you probably get is 5 minutes wasting your time with what looks like critical thinking but is not critical thinking. It's just guessing. Guessing when you don't have background knowledge is not critical thinking. Christine flips this script entirely. The very first thing that she does, Christine, don't do that. She tells them the definition. Good God, Christine, the kids will hate it. It'll be really boring for the kids if you do that. Don't do that. Then she even has them pronounce it. Say caustic on 2, 1, 2, caustic, right? So now they can say it when they read it, when they use it, right? They begin to orthographically map it, which means that they can read it. Once she gives them the knowledge first, and then once everyone has the knowledge, now she starts to ask them questions. Really interesting, fun, playful questions, like what judge's caustic remark at the talent show have been? What about this image suggests the liquid is caustic? Would you want to be friends with someone who frequently makes caustic remarks, right? They are now applying their knowledge of the word. They are actually literally, now they're doing critical thinking and problem solving. They're using a piece of knowledge to solve the problem in a new way. They're applying it in a new way. P.S., instead of having a simplistic definition, now they have a rich definition of the word caustic, a deep definition of caustic that they can apply in multiple settings. Start with the definition. The goal of most vocabulary instruction in most classrooms is to arrive at the definition. Start with the definition. Just tell them. And then let them play with the word. It's a lot more fun. And that is why this room explodes to life, because they're fun, playful questions, and suddenly everyone can play. Even the kids who don't have a great vocabulary and no one's ever used the word caustic in their house, and when the teacher asks them, what do you think caustic means? They're like, please don't call on me because I literally have no idea. Suddenly, they can engage in the conversation, and the playing field has been leveled. So vocabulary is a form of knowledge, and we should approach it accordingly. Just a little bit more in this beautiful chimera of context clues. Here's a sentence from an imaginary book. Their hands were cut and raw when, exhilarated, they reached the top of the cliff face. If you had to guess, based on context clues, use context clues to guess what the word exhilarated means, go. What would you guess? Exhilarated, just shout out, what do you think exhilarated would mean based on the context clues? Tired, exhausted. Maybe you would think it's a synonym for exhausted. But interestingly, exhilarated means the opposite of that. Context clues are often non-directive or misdirective. So it's folly to use them to infer word meaning. In fact, it's folly also because the word is most important when the word changes the sentence, when the meaning pivots around. The idea is that it's so unexpected that they're exhilarated at the top of the cliff. The word is most meaningful when the context clues are least helpful. Much better to say, guys, exhilarated means happy, excited, and energized. Then we maybe play with it a little bit. Why might they have been exhilarated at the top of the cliff? What might they have done to show their exhilaration? When else in the novel has someone felt exhilarated? What's something that doesn't involve physical exercise that might make you feel exhilarated, right? Just like quick, playful application questions, much more powerful. That really is critical thinking, as opposed to this guessing game that, again, is unscientific and folly and not fun for students. Two quick things. This is Christine's image that she puts on the board. After she puts it on the board, she puts it on a board over on the side with these are all their vocabulary words from that unit to make it easy and accessible for kids to, they can flip their eyes to the side and they can start using their vocabulary words just with a little brief reminder, right? So she keeps the words in their working memory so they can play with them. This is a beautiful video that I don't have time to show you. I just want to talk a little bit about writing, and I think I have just enough time to show you this video. Writing is so profoundly important to the teaching of reading. In three important ways. Writing is slow, writing is durable, and writing is difficult. Difficult is important because learning happens when we think hard about the meaning of the learning object. Daniel Willingham says, memory is the residue of thought. You have to think hard about things. Writing is harder than speaking. But slow is also important. Durable is also important. Durable means I can go back to it and I can re-examine what I said or what I thought I said and improve it and change it. But slow is strangely important too. And I just want to show you, this is a math class in which students are doing writing, but I think it's so fascinating in what it tells us about.
And no solutions just by solving algebraically. Write your conjectures down. How will we know just by solving algebraically whether we have infinite solutions or no solutions?
A conjecture is an educated guess, like a hypothesis. Can I just ask you to reflect for 15 seconds? How does her using that phrase to describe the writing that they're doing, write your conjectures down, how does it influence student cognition in the classroom? 15 seconds to discuss. Do you want to talk about this one? Do you want to talk about conjectures? It's your reward for mentioning phase reading. Thanks, everybody. Do Do you mind just speculating? How might the word conjectures influence student thinking here a little bit?
I think when you use the word conjectures as a student, it's
Yeah.
going to want to make you write something that's worthy of the term.
Oh, interesting.
It's going to impact your word choice, make it more sophisticated.
Oh, interesting. I'm suggesting that you elevate your thinking just by saying write down a conjecture, write down a hypothesis. It's like, so that sort of says something about the writing process. Love that. Any other responses? You could almost say there's like a contrary influence that works in synergy of the word conjecture. You want to talk about that? Yeah, in the black shirt. Yeah. It allows students to begin writing before they know the answer. How often does that happen in the classroom? Most of the writing that we do in the classrooms is what I would call summative writing, which is like justify your opinion, explain your opinion, using evidence. That is a really important thing to be able to do. You should do lots of that. But there's another kind of writing out there that helps us to process ideas, especially if they're like midstream when we're reading something. Take 30 seconds to jot down your first thoughts. Take 30 seconds to write down some conjectures. Why might Jonas have reacted this way? When we lower the stakes like that, we can both use language to elevate it and seem like an important task, but also lower the stakes so that students get experience using writing as a tool to not just explain their thinking, but to discover what they think. And writers themselves talk about this all the time. Joan Didion says, I write to discover what I think. Most of us don't act, in our best writing, we don't know what we think before we start. We rarely give kids access to that in the classroom. So let's just name this idea, which is when I lower the stakes and I allow you to begin writing before you know the answer, especially when I drop that in very short, midstream, while we're reading something, just think in writing about this. That is a very powerful tool to increase thinking for students. We'll call that formative writing, in contrast to summative writing, which is like explain your already established thought. Okay, so off they go, they're writing.
Loving the quick pencil to paper. Track me in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I want to have a really good discussion around this. So first, someone start us off about when do you know you'll have no...
What is wrong with these children? Why are all their hands in the air? Well, one thing is when I ask you to speak about something, if I let you write about it first, you have thought about it carefully, and you actually have something to say. It's actually a good thing that many kids don't raise their hands because they don't want to say something off the top of their heads. They're kids who have thought, like, I should really have something thought through and useful to say before I speak up in class. When we let students write first, we let everyone the discussion starts at version 2.0, and we again level the playing field for all those students who want to think carefully. And you see that here.
Solutions. Get us started. Track Sydney, nice and loud.
If the coefficients are the same, but the constants differ, there are no solutions. And
if the coefficients and the constants are the same, they're infinite. You're much more likely to get this kind of beautiful, thoughtful answer if someone has thought slowly about it, right? She's half reading her answer. It shows how hard she's been thinking during that brief 30 seconds when they've written. When we give students the opportunity to write briefly in the midst of a thought process, we let them think more deeply. Most writing in classrooms happens at the end of the lesson, but if we can insert these tiny formative intervals of just 30 seconds, we allow students to think more deeply about the things that we expose them to.
Build off her answer. Let's hear some nice habits of discussion. Track Sadi.
Okay, Sadi is the kid in the foreground here with the blue backpack. He's just starting to put his hand down. This is the most fascinating moment in any of the videos that I'm going to show you today. I'm just going to ask you to interpret what's happening here.
Jasmine, you're up next.
If your lines intersect at every point, which means they're coincidental, then you will know that they're infinite solutions. And if intersect...
I'm just going to take it back here. He says, if your lines intersect at every point, which means they're coincidental, what does that tell you about Sadi's thought process here? 15 seconds to chat that out with a colleague. sorry to cut you off. The clock is a ruthless enemy, and I want to make sure that you get a break. I just want to point out here that when you speak at 150 words per second. You have to know something really well to be able to get it into your speech at that speed. Again, if you studied I'm studying Spanish, if I wanted to send a message to the hotel clerk in Sevilla to say I'd like a late checkout, right? I could take my time and write an email, I could probably do it. But if I had to walk up to the clerk in real time at 150 words per minute and use the conditional tense, no chance. Writing is slow. When we let students process their ideas at, say, 15 or 20 words per minute, we allow them to access new ideas that they are just beginning to discover and encode in their minds, new vocabulary, new concepts. Sadi tells us that because it's clearly the first time in his life he's ever used the word coincidental. Coincidental. It is a beautiful thing for him to begin incorporating this piece of technical vocabulary. It's because he had time to go slowly and look back at his notes, right? Use it for the first time. When we let students slow down and think deliberately, we allow them to access ideas that are just on the periphery of their understanding. Those are exactly often the things that we want them to be talking about in class. So there are a couple of just like, I think, real values of writing that are exposed here. There's more in this video, but I'm running short of time, so I'm going to skip it and send you the rest of this to watch on your own. It's super beautiful, and just make a couple of really quick wrap-up points. Just to cap this video, we should think about the type of writing that we give students to do. I would argue there are at least 3 types of writing, and we should make deliberate decisions about which ones. One is summative writing, which asks students to frame, explain, or support a fully formed opinion or argument. That is a great thing to have to do in class. There is also this kind of writing called formative writing, which is used to discover what the writer thinks, right? Short bursts of it in the middle of a task. These are rarely done. They're very powerful for students. Then there's another type of writing called developmental writing, which is designed to use parameters to improve syntactic control. I'll just give you an example. Here's some examples of formative prompts. I'm imagining that I'm reading wholes. Jot down your first thoughts. Why does Stanley help Zero learn to read? Why might, just the word might there, why might Stanley help? What are some possible reasons? Think that through. And these allow students, they lower the stakes and allow students to think in writing. That's formative writing. Here's a developmental writing prompt from one of my favorite paintings, Peter Bruegel the Elder's Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. Let's say I show you this painting and I point out to you that this is Icarus here in this painting in the circle. And I say to you, describe the meaning of the painting in one carefully written sentence, beginning with the phrase, at first glance. Go. And you have to write. 2 things happen right there. First of all, I caused you to look at the painting twice and to talk about the experience of looking at the painting twice. But maybe just as important, I cause you to write with an introductory prepositional phrase that many students would not do that left to their own devices. Instead, they would give us a paragraph full of wooden, inflexible subject, verb, object sentences. I think boop, I think bop, I think bink. That same barrier emerges in their reading. They struggle to read complex syntactical sentences, and one of the best ways to get mastery over complex syntactic forms is to practice using them in your own writing. So developmental writing are very short one-sentence exercises. The scarcity causes me to have to get lots of new ideas into my sentence, and I often give them a parameter like a sentence starter here to cause it to be more challenging. So those are 3 types of writing. Here's another video I won't have time to show you. Really quickly, what do all the clips that I've shown you have in common? Well, one thing that they have in common is that the students in Gabby's classroom, like enjoying bringing the book to life together, that bonds them. And if the book is going to have a hope in its death struggle against the cell phone, it's going to survive for the reasons that stories have survived in time immemorial for us, because they become social, because we allow students to connect while they read, to laugh together, to gasp together, to experience this text together as a shared experience. So when we make the act of reading books together the central task of our reading classrooms, I would say all classrooms, we can curate the reading experience. So it's rich and meaningful through background knowledge, and social, so students see each other loving the text. So it socializes and rebuilds sustained attentional capacity, and just maybe then, so it will give young people back their access to the storehouse of books, the storehouse of almost every great idea that this society has built, and that access is disappearing. So we talked a little bit about some ways to read a book. I'll talk more about them in my second session. I just want to say, actually, I was teasing you. You were pretty great as an audience, so hooray. If you'd like to know more, you can read the TLAC Guide to the Science of Reading. If you want to know about our Reading Reconsidered curriculum, there's a QR code that you can check it out there. And I just want to say thank you again. This has been so much fun. Good luck with the rest of the conference.
All right, thank you very much again, Doug. Thank you for starting the conversation. I know you're itching to continue the conversation, so please do so with coffee and pastries, and sessions start up at 10:30. Thank you.